coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Also streaming right now, on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@The Gailey Show. Welcome to The Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker. In studio with me, our executive producer, Jim Pounds.
Hey, all.
It is Friday, which is Culture and Entertainment Week, because we need some culture and entertainment after this past week. What is on the show today? Well, Max Austin will be here, friend of the show, returning with his new novel, That Is What We Are. But first, Minneapolis Musical Theater returns to the stage with the area premiere of Triassic Parq, the musical, which opens at Lush Lounge and Theater March 22nd. It will run there through April 13th. Joining us from the production, Andrew Newmann, who is the artistic director of Minneapolis Musical Theater, and one of the stars, Max Kile, joins us as well. Okay, Andrew, Triassic Parq is a retelling of a certain kind of famous dinosaur movie, originally from the 1990s, but now somehow a multi-decade franchise for some reason. But Triassic Parq is told from the dino's point of view?
That's correct. Yes, and done very, very much in the just shy of copyright infringement mode.
Don't tell Donna Langley at Universal.
So yeah, it is the tale of Jurassic Park, but told from the perspective of the dinosaurs. So it is really focusing in specifically on the story of how the dinosaurs adapted in the wild, how they changed gender in order to reproduce. And, you know, we kind of take a queer look at that and kind of the, you know, the trans identity in where they're in, and have a lot of fun with that, and a lot of humans singing and dancing like dinosaurs.
Wait, so which dinosaurs are there? Because there's a couple from the original movie that I'm kind of hoping are going to be there.
Oh yeah. Well, we've got our velociraptors, of course.
Yes.
And Max is one of our velociraptors as well.
Yep.
Then our T-Rexes, of course, because you've got to have a T-Rex.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just not Triassic Parq.
No.
And then a couple more surprises too, some new characters as well.
I was going to say the kids are going to be disappointed, but kids aren't welcome, right? This is an 18+.
We are suggesting it's not necessarily for the kiddos. There is some, sexual content, language, and violence, all being portrayed by dinosaurs, but yeah, not exactly the family-friendly variety hour.
Wait, so Max, okay, you're playing one of the most iconic roles on screen cinema, I think, of the 20th century. Was there like method acting involved in this, or like how did you prep for this role?
I thought about going the route of like hunting, scavenging, eating animals raw, but I decided it was just a little too much. But the way I approached the character, even though she is a dinosaur, it's still very much like a character, and I wanted to approach the show and the text with like a lot of truth, because that's at least how I feel like stories are best portrayed, is when it's real for the characters. So I just kind of dug into the text and figured out what was going on in her head and what drove her to go on her journey that starts the show.
Wow. Is there a certain amount of sort of drama? Now, I mean, I realize it's musical theater and all that, but it sounds like there's, you could argue there's some depth here. There's some things in play that are important, like you say, Max, to the characters at least, and probably the audience too. So is it a camp fest, which it sounds like it could be, or is it deeper than that?
There's a little bit of both, honestly. It's very campy. It's very silly. But then there are a lot of moments of depth that I wasn't really expecting when I got the script. Mm-hmm. There's this one duet between the T-Rexes in particular that chokes me up every time we run it, because it's so sweet and sentimental and melancholic. So it definitely kind of rides that line between very silly, very campy, stupid, laugh out loud funny, and then flipping that script to be like really heartfelt and human, ironically.
I think that's great. I mean, that combination is unbeatable. When you have more than one dimension to play, that's fantastic.
Yes.
So Lush, that's an interesting, I know space is a challenge, having run a couple of theater companies myself. Space is a nightmare usually. I know they've been good community partners and all that. How does that work in that space? How do you feel about making that transition? Because that's not a typical theater space, I would say.
Yeah. Well, it is. It really is the perfect vibe for this show. I've heard a lot of people have described it as like one of the musicals from Drag Race. So, like, obviously, we would want to do that at Lush. And you're right, Jim. They have been like such a wonderful community partner, and I think they really want to, make this beautiful new theater space available to people who want to use it to put on their art. And so when we started having a conversation, they were all in from the get-go. And when we told them about the show, we're like, yeah, we're thinking about doing this musical version of Jurassic Park, but everyone's a dinosaur. They were like, love it,
we're in. Yeah. You've said enough.
Yep.
One of the things that what is the Musical Mondays? Am I saying the name of that
Mondays.
right?
Yes.
Have you been to that event by any chance? We caught one several months ago now, and the amount of talent that's been to that stage to see that space and performed in that event, LGBTQ and otherwise, is pretty large by now. So it's not like you have to explain, I'll bet, to a lot of people where Lush is or what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And we were just at this past Musical Mondays, given a sneak preview of the show, and just like absolutely packed crowd. And again, just like one of the things that I always love about when I'm going to Lush is that it's such a positive, welcoming community there. Everyone was so happy to be with each other and listening to wonderful, talented people sing great music. And I think, especially these days, it's important to find those spaces when you can get together as a community and have joy. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm really, really excited for doing this show at Lush. I think it's a great example for people to come together and laugh and reminisce about, movies that came out when they were younger or maybe not born yet. Because it's
careful. You're right on the edge there.
No. And just kind of reflect on our community and share time together.
Well, it could be it's a liberation story against a corporate fascist overlord, right?
Basically, yeah. Well, so the characters, all of our characters are going through a lot of changes and situations that they never expected themselves to be in. And the show is really all about how important it is to explore that and question that. And, when there are authority figures that are telling you no, if your heart is telling you yes, go with your heart. I mean, that's really kind of what the show gets to the point of.
Is the cast new to MMT? I mean, I was the managing director there years ago, and I felt like they had a lot of the same people over and over again. And so is this a lot of people know, or are these folks people haven't seen before?
I'd say it's a mix. Max has done a show with us before.
I did one show with MMT back in 2019.
Okay. What did you do? What show did you do?
I did Night of the Living Dead, the musical. So another spoof musical.
Yeah.
Square's doing Dracula, they're going to call you.
So
a mix of old and new.
Yeah, and that's kind of reflected like in the cast and then also on the production team. Kjer Whiting, our director, this is his first time working with us, but Amanda Weiss, our music director, has done many shows with MMT over the years, both as an actor, music director, and director. So yeah, there's a really nice grouping of all over the place.
You just brought up something that I hadn't thought of. I assume this is a small combo, right? Because where would they go in that space? Where would they sit in the? I mean, it's probably only like 3 instruments, right? Or
yeah.
something.
Well, we've got a small, mighty 4-piece band.
4-piece.
And I think I'm gonna leave it at that because there's some fun interaction with the audience that the band will be doing.
Where's Waldo? Okay. cool.
little bit, yeah, I guess so. We can phrase it like that.
No, it's a great space. We, for our podcast, This Queer Book Saved My Life, we did 3 events, live version tapings of the show there, and so it's a really that we from personal experience we know what great partners Lush is and how fun that stage can be. And I don't know if you can say this yet, like, Max, what is your costume? Like, do you have claws? Can you say this?
No claws.
Spoiler alert. Oh, come
We're not
on.
going that literal, but
Fabulous nails.
I will have my nails painted, but I can't have.
But you would do that anyway, maybe, or I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't want them to get in the way of choreography, but I will be. All of the characters have specific color stories going on, so I, being the Velociraptor of innocence, have a lot of pink on. A lot of femininity is portrayed by me, which is very fun.
Very fun. That's great. How many does this theater seat when they're doing something like that? Are you going to have tables and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So it's set up, cabaret style seating, and there's also, it's attached to their main bar and lounge, so you can order drinks and food during the show. I think they get up to capacity of about 120, but when you get into standing room only, like at one of the musical Mondays, I don't even know how many people you can fit in there.
I don't know either. Yeah.
Are you going to have a Triassic signature drink?
We are. We actually are. We're all very excited about it. We're in the midst of coming up with some punny names for it right now.
Oh, no, they're really great at that.
Yeah.
They did one for us. It was called the Kermsers. Which was based off of the first LGBTQ bar. That's what Kermsers was the first LGBTQ bar in St. Paul. Yeah. And I am so blanking right now on what was in it, but it was tasty.
Yeah.
So
that's the sign of a good cocktail, though, isn't it? I don't know what was in it.
I don't remember, but it was good.
After 2, you don't care what's
in. We are coming up on a break here. We are talking with Andrew Newmann, the artistic director of Minneapolis Musical Theater, and Max Kile, who is one of the stars of Triassic Parq, the musical, which will be opening March 22nd at Lush Lounge and Theater and running through April 13th. We're going to take that break. More with both of them on the flip side. Keep it here, tuned to AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Welcome back to the Gaily Show. I am John Parker. It is 21 minutes past the hour. We are talking about the upcoming area premiere of Triassic Parq, the musical, which is presented by Minneapolis Musical Theater in collaboration with Lush Lounge and Theater. This marks MMT's 51st area premiere. With us is Andrew Newmann, the artistic director of Minneapolis Musical Theater, and one of its stars, Max Kile. And Andrew, congratulations, 51st area premiere.
Yeah, that seems kind of nuts. I mean, MMT has been around for about 30 years now, so when you put it into perspective of that. But yeah, there have been so many fantastic opportunities we've had to present these new works, and works that I don't think you would probably see in other places, which is really kind of the core of our mission.
Can you tell us a little bit about the history of this particular piece, where this is the area premiere, but where did it originate, or with who?
Yeah. So this show is from about 2014, had a couple of productions around there off Broadway and on the West Coast. And it kind of really started to pop up on our radar around 2019, early 2020. So just before COVID. Mm-hmm. And, we were always big fans of the show. If you're familiar with MMT's work, we love the quirky off-kilter musical, like, as Max mentioned, Night of the Living Dead or Evil Dead, Toxic Avenger.
The seldom seen, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think once we came back from COVID and we're kind of looking at where we wanted to move forward, and, the places that we wanted to perform at, this one kind of rose up to the top, especially once we started talking with Lush.
Yep.
Can you talk to me about, so the park is Q, P-A-R-Q. Can we talk a little bit more about the queerness in the, because you were talking about there's some gender shifting within some of the dinosaurs. So maybe Max, we'll start with you about the queer aspects of Triassic Parq.
Yeah, so the show follows the footsteps, giant footsteps of the movie, where all of the dinosaurs are all made to be female so that they don't reproduce. But then if you have seen Jurassic Park, and this isn't a spoiler because it's in the second song of the musical, but life finds a way, and there is some frog DNA that is put into the dinosaurs to like complete the DNA strand, and some frogs will change genders when the species needs more men so that they can reproduce. So that happens for some of our characters in the shows. So the show starts off everyone being like, ha ha la la, we love being women, yay. And then some of them start growing male appendages and everyone's like, what is going on?
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, cuckoo bananas, but like approached with a lot of levity, except for some moments where it's a little more serious. But for the most part, it's just played off as like, this is crazy and we have to laugh about it.
And now that science has been banned, so
Yes.
you know the
Well, and that's also an important part of the show. Two of our other velociraptors in the show are the velociraptor of science and the velociraptor of faith.
oh wow.
So, you know, there's a lot of back and forth between ideas about religion and that kind of, you know, cultural, like just how that is embedded in cultures and science and facts and learning and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Would we know the authors from another piece, or are they new? The people that wrote the
They're pretty new. They're pretty I think they've done a couple of stuff off Broadway. I know the composer Marshall Palett just did a production, I think, at the Signature Theater in Virginia, I think. But I think that was about a blind or a deaf armed forces member in World War I. So very different from this one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, geez. If they turned that into a campy musical, oh boy.
Nothing is safe. When you did the preview, what kind of response did you get? I mean, talk about an appreciative audience, right? I mean, that are all prepared to love anything that anyone does, even reasonably well. I feel they're so generous. How did they react to this unorthodox musical?
Yeah, it was really, really fun. I mean, one of the song that we sang was one of Max's first songs in the show. And like she said, it's all about the joys of womanhood and being a woman. But then throw in a couple of lines in there about how we've got death claws and we're going to eat people too later. Yeah, so I think we caught some people off guard with that, but that's kind of what we're going for.
Is there any song appreciation of Jeff Goldblum in there?
There's a couple references to Jeff Goldblum's character. I won't spoil him, but there are a couple references to him.
There are lots of little like fun references to the movie just kind of peppered in throughout, both like in terms of like visual gags and like lines in the script and in the music too. Ones that even I'm picking up on now is like we're in rehearsal. I'm like, oh, I get that. That's this bit. I hadn't realized that before.
Andrew, in full disclosure, Andrew and I have been in 2 shows together, I think, at Artistry. We did La Cage and we did Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Yeah. And we might have done others, but those are 2 in mind. So one of the reasons I was so excited to do this is to congratulate you on your ascension, you know, to the role you have and at an exciting theater company that I just think people really need to get out and see, because if you think you know everything about musical theater, you don't. And so you need to broaden your education beyond God bless Chanhassen and all of that. But so I wanted to say congratulations to you personally. How's that administrative part of the life going?
Well, thank you, Jim. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I've been in this position since about November 2023. And it really is something that I've always wanted to do. Since you know me, Jim, I live, breathe, and eat and sleep musical theater 24/7.
Yes, you do.
And so it's so rewarding and so exciting to feel like I'm part of bringing something to people that they want to see and that they'll enjoy. And what I really especially love about MMT's mission and finding those new or rarely seen shows is that it gives us the chance to like turn a spotlight onto some of those shows that you're like, oh, I've heard about that one, but I've never seen it. Or like, I love the cast album of that, but no one ever does it. And that's what Minneapolis Musical Theater really excels at, and what I really want to do with it as well. So,
well, congratulations on the new show. We've got to leave it there, but folks, you need to go check it out. It opens at Lush Lounge and Theater on March 22nd. We've included a link on our website and in the show notes of how you can get tickets. Go to aboutmmt.org. Andrew, Max, thank you for joining us here on The Gailey Show.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Break a leg next week. All right, up next, we've got Max Austin, friend of the show, with his new novel, That Is What We Are. Keep it tuned here to The Gailey Show.
Oh, wait, hold on. I think.
Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. This is The Gailey Show, simulcasting on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@TheGaileyShow. I am your host, John Parker. It is 33 minutes past the hour. Author Max Austin, friend of The Gailey Show, returns. He has a new biofictional LGBTQ plus memoir out titled That Is What We Are. Max, hello. Welcome back to The Gailey Show all the way from the United Kingdom.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you for putting up with me Babylon for the next how long it is. I really it's so good to be here. I feel like we're at home.
Well, we are glad to have you back. So let's start with, because this was similar to your previous book, and I want to unpack for folks. You call it a biofictional LGBTQ plus memoir, and that is not a genre title that we are necessarily familiar with here in the States. So can you unpack what you mean by that?
Okay, so my day job, I'm a nurse, and by night, I'm an accidental author. Okay, and I'm represented by the wonderful Spectrum Books. I'm supposed to put it into context because I'm also, me and my husband adopted 2 children from the care system, and they've been with us for about 10 years now. They're wonderful, wonderful people, and they're really, really thriving. But to answer your question, just to put it into context, first of all, is that I've wrote it in a biofictional way to get my message across, but also protect the people involved in the stories as well. So I think I said before, John, imagine the film The Titanic. Okay, everybody knows it. Sadly, you know that ship's going down at the end, don't you?
What? I'm joking.
Yeah, it's funny.
You spoiled it. No, I'm joking.
I know. I'm sorry. I broke it. I've just broke the whole thing for you. Yeah, sadly, it does go down at the end. Sorry. But did Rose say to Jack, paint me like one of your French girls? And did and the chaise long did that really happen? So biofiction is a way of blending my truth with some stories along the way, because there's patient stories in my books. But it's not like watching ER or Casualty. It's more what my characters are learning from them. Really, there's no George Clooney or, sadly, in them.
Well, if it's fiction, you can write in a George Clooney, right?
Well, yeah, if only.
Okay, so to kick off the novel, our main character, Max, with partner Wayne, visit Gladys, who is a medium. So walk us through when folks turn to page 1, what are they going to see there with Gladys?
So it starts off with Max actually talking to his therapist, who is a black Labrador. Okay, we learn. Okay, and he's having a conversation with his black Labrador named Pongo, and just talking about how he feels, because Max's problem is that he just don't want to tell everybody everything, and he just like, oh, what will they say if I get it wrong? What will he's really insecure. He's searching for answers, and he's grieving, and he finds his answer in a very camp medium named Gladys. And Wayne and Max go and visit her, and she's not what he's expecting. He's expecting a kaftan wearing turbaned woman like a 1940s Hollywood movie star, and she's not. She's quite normal, thanks very much, and come in. And he starts talking about the past. It's a nice way of introducing some of the themes in the first book and the people who he's missing, who have passed over into spirit, according to the story. And that's where we learn about his bereavement. We learn about he's just not feeling right. And his ward manager straitjacket, as he calls it, his uniform, it's just tightening him every time he puts it on, because he misses being at the bedside. Have you ever been in a position where perhaps you thought you wanted to do something, and when you got there, it wasn't what you wanted it to do or be, and then actually, what do I do next? What's eating away at him? What is it that's making Max so unhappy? And that's where the story starts. And that's basically the premise of the story. It's all about my characters, no matter how they beautifully identify, are all trying to be the best they can be, and no matter what life throws at them. I've introduced in my second book, That Is What We Are, some new characters. For example, we meet Billy, who makes a transition to live her authentic self as Laura. Okay. And it's really important for me that I represent every single colour of our flag, especially how the world is at the moment. Yeah. And without being political at all, this is my way of saying, actually, we are who we are, and every voice should be heard. For example, I've just got it written down here in case I forgot. I dedicate the second book as this is for all those who felt voiceless. I couldn't put it any more simple or any more powerful than that.
Well, who said that? Was it Audre Lorde? That our bodies are political. You know, it's really hard to separate the political out of who we are on a day-to-day basis. So I did want to ask, did since it's biofictional, did you have a Gladys? Did you know a Gladys?
I did. I certainly did.
Because that Gladys was very spot on accurate. That was wild. I was like, this is the greatest medium of all time.
Yeah. Move over Hollywood medium. Bring in Gladys. Yeah. Yeah. Bring in Camp Gladys. Yeah. I did have a Gladys in my life, and at that point, yeah. And she was as described. Yeah. And she did live in a Victorian home, as I describe.
Oh wow! Well, it is a great way to kick off the book. Something I noticed as I was going through it, you have a very like theatrical, dialogue heavy style when you're writing. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, sure. I like to talk as if we're having a conversation. Some of my influences are sort of some like in the UK, some of like the 1950s, 60s, and 70s characters, like two housewives having a conversation, gossiping over the fence. Yeah, that sort of innuendo, end of the pier humor. that sort of, somebody described my work recently, my first book, as Casualty, told by Lily Savage. So
I don't
it's
know
that.
those references.
So, okay. So okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. ER, told by Bianca Del Rio. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That sort of. Yeah. I've
Wait,
just
do you have a medical
done
drama
the
called
Anglo.
Casualty?
Pardon?
You have a medical drama called Casualty?
We do. Yeah. We do. It's been run for years. Yeah. So ER, told by Bianca Del Rio, would be the interpretation. Yeah. So it's that sort of chattiness, that
Mhm.
sort of light and shade, very theatrical. Yeah.
Well, and because of that, it just makes there's such a movement of energy to your book. I mean, it just like flies, which is great, because when you get going, you're like, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm like, 3/4 of the way through. So it makes for a really lovely read how you're focusing on that dialogue, and able to create character through that. You know what I mean? Like there's that whole show don't tell mantra. But as I was reading, I was like, wow, you're able to bring out a lot of character without having to have a lot of expository text in there, because you just kind of get a feel for the person and who they are and what they're about just through 4 or 5 lines of dialogue.
Yeah, that's really, really a lovely thing to say. Thank you very much, first of all, because I want to tackle all the issues. Like there is a later coming out and live story, as I'm sure you've seen in there. Okay, there is obviously we meet Laura. And some of the story, some of the characters from book 1, sort of Max and they're all sort of, and Wayne and Danny, they're all going through a process. Danny finds love. My Ice Maiden finds love in the second book with a man who just idolizes her. There's a lot of music reference in there. There's a lot of campness with country and western music. There's a reason why my books are named after islands in the spring. Can't get my words out. Islands in the stream. There's a large Dolly element in there as well. Bless her, what she's going through.
I just got that now. Yeah, islands in the stream. That is what we are.
Yeah. So, how could the first book, as you know, is called "How Can We Be Wrong"?
Oh, yeah. Why am I just getting that?
That's okay. It's just part of that. It's actually a tribute to the sterling work that Dolly Parton does for our community and the wider world.
Right.
And as we know in my books, there's a drag queen called Miss Nancy Eclair. Okay, and she does Dolly better than Dolly. Does that runs all the way through, and the drag culture is mentioned in my stories as well. Well, what's quite interesting is what actually all my characters is what are they actually portraying, but what's going on the inside. That's the dichotomy of all of them. Yeah.
You said earlier you were an accidental author. What does that mean, accidental author? Because your primary job is a healthcare. So when you say accidental author, what does that mean?
Okay, I had this story burning away inside of me for 30 years. I think we talked about this last time we spoke, John. Okay, my story is that I was served an almost lethal dose of bullying, bigotry, and hate by the very nursing community that I represent today as a senior nurse. Well, that's a kick in the rubber parts to start with, isn't it? Yeah, the irony. And this story of mine, I hid. I was going to work. I was saying, oh, yeah, we've got inclusive policies. The world's turning into a better place. And be your authentic self at work all the time. Hiding my truth. Because it was so bad and it was so awful what happened to me. I just struggled, and the stigma that followed me around, and it does, and it still does now, was so unbearable for years. I was scared. So the accidental bit is that actually it just seeped out of me. I could not tell this story anymore. Yeah. So I'm not sure if you want me to give a reason why I wrote this story, for a message for our community about our hope and mental health recovery and actually the importance of kindness and culture. Would you like me to just brief what went on?
Well, something that I've appreciated is how you do sort of capture the milieu, just the complexity of the full, community as it is right now.
Yes. So what happened to me is that I was a young student nurse, very, very naive, very, very unsure of myself back in the day. We're talking the late 80s, early 90s. And I met this man. He was everything and more. He could walk on water. He was well connected. He was just brilliant. And he was already qualified as a nurse, and he was everything I wanted to be. And I made a beeline for him. And back in the day, you wouldn't believe it now looking at me, but I could turn the look. So I just made a beeline for him. And we struck up a relationship. And one night I met him after a shift at the hospital I was working at. And he said, I've got 3 things to tell you. I'm HIV positive. The hospital have found out. Grab your bag. We've got to go into hiding because the press are after us.
Hold it right there. That's a great cliffhanger. I've got to take a commercial break. That's going to be great. We're going to pick it up right there when we come back. One break to get to, but we're going to hear the end of that story. Cliffhanger here on The Gailey Show. Be sure to follow us on our Blue Sky account at thegaileyshow.org for ticket giveaways and more progressive news and analysis. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am John Parker. With me here is Max Austin, whose new novel is out now. That Is What We Are. Max, you were sharing about your story. Why do we pick it up there? There was a great cliffhanger ending.
Yes. So just to recap, I was met at the ward door by this man who I thought was my world. And he said just 3 things to me. I'm HIV positive. The hospital found out, and we've got to go into hiding. Get your bags. Off we go, because the press are after us. And I did that. It was awful. We disappeared in the middle of the night. And for years still, when I heard a letterbox clatter, I thought it was like a camera. PTSD, And so we disappeared into the night, and I didn't know who I was, where I was, who he was. And we went into hiding in a gay-owned hotel, thinking it offered us some purgatory. Big mistake. When the story broke, we were banished to our rooms. And I remember lying on the bed with my new best friend, Jack Daniels. Okay. And I didn't know what was real, because as the story broke and the images were being broadcast into the room, there was a picture of him, there was pictures of me, there was pictures of the hospital, there was good, kind people whipped up into a state of frenzy. People thought I knew. I was learning as they were learning about it all. And bearing in mind, in the UK at the time, it was in the era of Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government, Don't Die of Ignorance, Section 28, prohibiting gay rights, and the hysteria around HIV and AIDS, and it was just terrible. And sort of the Freddie Mercury thing was going on at the time, and people were being vilified. And we were sitting in the middle of it in a hotel room with a social background. And it was awful. It was terrible. And how did I explore that? I went for a walk in the middle of the night. I went to the cliff face in more pain and more agony than I've ever been in my life. And for some reason, I passed out and I fell backwards rather than forwards over the cliff face. And when I woke up the next morning, I was in more pain and more agony than I've ever done or ever been in all my life, but still alive for some reason. And even now, I talk about in our community the importance of kindness, the importance of resilience, the importance of mental health support. Because even now, when I'm triggered, I can still taste that sea salt on my breath. So I wrote this story, and we were joking earlier about the campness and the light and shade and, you know, the frivolity. But actually, it's a story of hope, mental health recovery, and making the best of what you can be and finding your tribe, getting that support, getting that people around you to help you. Because as we know, I think I mentioned to you before, you've only got to look at the sterling work of international organizations such as Stonewall, who say that people in our community suffer with mental health problems and are more chance to take suicide attempts. Been there, done that. You have more chance of mental health problems and difficulty with recovery. That was me. And have stigma and hate that follow around just for being who they are and who they want to love. That was me. So going back to the story, when we actually came back from the hiding, because it was before the days of mobile phones, text messaging, we were shut off from the world. That's when the real stigma hate started. How I went back onto those wards, I will never know. I wasn't allowed to use the toilets. The staff wouldn't let me. All of a sudden, everybody had their own cup with a name on it. They wouldn't serve me in the canteen. And the things that they called me under the breath, while I can't say it, I should throw me off the area. And these were so-called nurses who I represent today. So 30 years later, to cut a long story short, I think it's really important to be authentic. My husband, who I've been with since then for the past 29 years, he's just wonderful. But even he suffered because he was working at the hospital. And when we met, he knew my story anyway, because the first thing I told him was that when he went to work on the wards, they were saying, "What are you doing with him? He's riddled."
No.
Yeah. So, you know, and I don't want to come across here in this interview today as angry, because I'm not. It comes from a place of strength. I've told my story to help people. If it stops one person from standing on that cliff face thinking they're not good enough, for whatever reasons, if it stops one person from thinking they haven't got a voice in our community, then it's, you know, the whole thing's been worthwhile. This is about the message. And I'm just so blessed that Spectrum Books thought that my story was so fun, you know, so powerful that they wanted to do the first one with me last year. How Can We Be Wrong? And that's been out since last March. And they've just done the follow-up one. That Is What We Are, with me again. And I'm really, really blessed. I can tell you today, John, because it's out there in the public eye, is that I've just signed a third contract.
Oh, wow.
For next year as well. So there'll be a third volume coming along to talk about Max and Wayne's experience and the changing culture in our community from actually being in the late 80s to the present day. So there's more coming.
Congratulations on that. That is fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. Congratulations on the second book. We want to have you back here for the third book, definitely. We will include links in the show notes and on our website for how, folks, you can connect with Max, and as well how to buy all of his books and to get the updates on his forthcoming one. The Matt McNeil Show is up next. Stay tuned for Native Roots Radio after that, and join us for all of the LGBTQ programming Saturday afternoon starting at 2 p.m. For now, keep it queer, America.